Ngā mihi and welcome to Sector Report. This week we tackle the most fragmented industry in agribusiness, wool. This country was built on the sheep's back, but that's a faded memory. Sheep numbers are down drastically and the national wool check has fallen by 2/3 in the last decade. Although I should add that prices for wool have risen 50% in the past month or two, albeit off a very low base. The government wants the industry sorted out and has appointed a Wool Unity Group to do just that. I'll be talking to its chairman, Colin Harvey. In my field report, I visit Sean Ryan of the Wool Merchants Association and, for an overview, the man who heads up the National Council of Wool Interests, Stephen Fuchs. But first, Colin Harvey. Well, Colin, welcome back to the Sector Report program here on Country 99 TV. Now, you're heading up the Wool Unity Group. Let's start with a thumbnail sketch of who just makes up the group and what its aims are.
It was basically put together by the Minister to bring together the wool industry in one group so that we could address issues long-term, such as a long-term positioning of wool in New Zealand, and in particular what we need to do with research and development, how we can coordinate that funding, how we can support on-farm activities that need to continue for wool. And the membership is made up of almost anyone with a major interest in selling wool, and this includes wool merchants, wool brokers, and some of the newer companies that are operating more in other ways in the market.
Now, David Carter had, before this current incarnation, had Murray Horn looking at in a sort of a task force situation.
Murray was the initial chairman, he formed it, and I've picked up the chairmanship from Murray.
I see,
yes.
Right, that's how it goes. I thought they were slightly different bodies.
No.
But I guess the unity in the title of it, the Wool Unity Group, says it all. You want a unified industry instead of what is pretty much its current state of fragmentation as an industry.
I think post-Wool Board, there's been a lot of fractions developed within the university, in the industry, and considerable tensions. A lot of tending to talk about each other rather than talk about the positive things that are happening in the marketplace. And of course, it was quite grim there for a while because the wool price did fall to some fairly quite low levels.
Well, they were pretty historically low, really, weren't they?
Yes.
So the fragmentation that, as you say, has tended to happen since the Wool Board was disestablished. How did the different factions line up? Who's who? Who's arguing on whose side?
You know, I mean, wool is an industry that goes back for centuries.
Yeah.
You know, and unlike other agricultural produce, it tends to keep. You know, I mean, wool, unlike milk or meat, you know,
we're very lucky in that respect.
Very lucky, it has an infinite shelf life. So it suits a trading environment, and we have had wool traders and wool brokers and wool auction systems and wool warehouses has been the picture of wool for the last nearly 200 years. So it's a very old business, and there's some people that have been there a long time doing business in a particular way. So, you know, I mean, when you've done things for a long time, there's a certain resistance to change. There's been a change, though, and I think it started really with New Zealand Merino, where we've seen the development of what we'd call an integrated value chain supply system, where the farmer is actually contracting to a person who makes the goods or retails the goods. Right. So it's a contract from the farmer right through to past the mill to the person who sells the goods, and that's been something that's new that's developed.
So, to be a little cynical about it, I guess a bit of a ticket clipping system has grown up over the years.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say. You know, I mean, wool's got to go to a vast number of places in the world. You know, we have people buying our wool in India and China and some pretty far off sort of places in the Middle East, where it is made into traditional carpets by hand in many cases. Yeah. So there's an enormous diverse market. We need people who access those markets, and the traditional wool traders and brokers have serviced that market for many years.
But there's a bit of young blood coming along, which perhaps has a different approach.
Yeah, I think, and it's really typified, I guess, an icebreaker. You know, being the our sort of leading brand. Icebreaker is a brand that comes from the New Zealand Merino farm, but goes right through to the person who experiences, and it's a very important thing to talk about, the joy of wearing an Icebreaker fabric. Yeah. So that capture of what that wool's about from the farm to the person experiencing the garment is a total value chain, and what it's done is link the farmer more to that value of that article, and bring more of that value back to the New Zealand Merino farmer. Yeah.
So in the case of Icebreaker, also the end customer is able to go back to see what particular farm that wool came from that is in the garment he's wearing.
Well, with that has come with that value capture has come a tracebacks. The whole system and Icebreaker have barcodes where you can actually see where the farm that wool has come from. And of course, internationally, that's quite good because some of our New Zealand Merino farms are pretty in some pretty fantastic places.
Yeah, well, you've got one yourself down at Wanaka.
Yes, and they're gorgeous. You know, I mean, lovely mountainsides, beautiful views, fantastic natural grazing environment for animals in terms of welfare. So it is a very good image.
So anyway, the essence of all this is that there's a premium price. We're going high end of the market, and the idea of the value chain, which is what you would like to promote in these reforms, is to get that premium going back down the line to the farmer instead of going into the hands of the middlemen, if you like.
Well, you have to be realistic here. And I've got to be careful saying I'm promoting it because I don't think I am. It's another system within the marketplace. But whatever we do, and I think if we turn and look at the coarse wool market, because I think this is where
that's where your challenges is.
That's where the challenges are, and we have now with Elders creating a Just Shorn brand, and with Wool Partners creating the Levine brand, we have a similar type of concept being developed for carpets, and soft flooring is the major use for our coarse wool. Now that's an attempt to bring that same marketing structure to that coarse wool market. It's a very adventurous, and as yet these ideas are, how would you say, ideas. We haven't got runs on board. You know, we've had a few. The Starbucks coffee textile is an important. These important small step in exactly that sort of space, but as yet we haven't seen these systems develop for coarse wool like we have for fine wool. And even when we do, if they're very successful at doing this, it's not going to move the bulk of New Zealand wool. You know, there's an enormous volume of wool we produce, and if we could do some value chain work, we will be moving a proportion of our wool at a higher price. Yeah. But we're still going to be producing a vast quantity of wool that has to be sold through those traditional markets and largely by those traditional marketers.
Before we wind up, Colin, do you find there has been in recent years a farmer apathy to wool?
I think this is probably the biggest problem that Wool Partners are going to face. Is not so much that farmers reject the idea, it's just that wool is such a byproduct to many sheep farmers now that they really don't or can't be bothered giving it the time of day. They're concentrating on meat production, often with integrated grazing systems, with maybe rearing heifers and or bull beef at the same time. They have a complicated farming operation, and they see wool as almost a sideline. So, you know, I've had some farmer friends of mine simply just dismissed any idea of doing anything with wool. They just treat it almost as they would have treated the sale of their old rams. You know?
Exactly.
It's a byproduct.
It's an interesting way to put it. Well, unfortunately, we're nearly out of time, Colin, but the industry has defeated other well-intentioned attempts to rationalise it over the last few years. You reckon your group will get it right, though?
I think it's a big challenge. I don't think rationalisation is probably the thing we're looking for. We're just looking for a coordinated effort, allowing individual companies to get on and develop initiatives in a free market system, and for that to add value to the total market as time goes on.
Yeah. And your deadline?
Oh, I don't have a specific deadline for this.
Okay. Fairly open-ended.
no, it's something that is going to be just continue. You know, I mean,
Right.
if I can put 12 months or more and get this thing, get some cohesion, that'll be great.
Yeah. So we're looking just simply at well-spaced reports to the Minister on progress, I
Yes.
guess. Yeah. Well, Colin, you're a very busy man with all this work in the wool industry going on. And thanks very much for your time this morning.
Thanks, John.
Appreciate it. Wool Unity Group Chairman Colin Harvey there. I'll be back in a moment with two different views of the wool industry. One from a wool merchant who buys and sells wool and physically handles it every day. And I talk to the chairman of the National Council of Wool Interests for his overview of reforms in the industry. The white gold we used to have before milk came along, yes, we grew rich on the sheep's back. But now sheep numbers are half their level of the 80s and prices have fallen by 2/3 in a decade. The Minister of Agriculture has appointed the Wool Unity Group with Colin Harvey in the chair to streamline a fragmented industry. The National Council of New Zealand Wool Interests is heavily involved. Its chairman, Stephen Fuchs, explains.
The National Council now is made up of most sectors of the industry and undertakes the role of establishing and maintaining standards, both national and international, of conducting arbitrations and resolving disputes. But more fundamentally, in recent years, the role has become more promotion, lobbying, getting involved in market recovery.
What organisations make up your membership and how many are there?
Our members are principally associations. Say, for example, the private treaty merchants as an association are members, and they have many hundreds of members, I think. The Wool Brokers Association, the Council of Wool Exporters, the Wool Scourers Association, the wool testing and certification bodies, grower groups via some of the cooperatives, wool equities. Basically, we cover from farm to first stage processing.